Hi, it's wonderful to meet you. My name's Emmy. I'm Jen's son. Yeah.
Yes, excellent. And I was flattered when she reached out to me, and just I think she had mentioned it to you, but I can record this session.
Awesome.
So the recording is on right now, but of course, like any recording, when I send it to her, you can like truncate it and take out what you want. But I thought it might be interesting to have it on video as well if you wanted.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for this, by the way. Yeah, just like that you're able to I'm actually able to interview you for just for like I'm doing a school project for culinary tech. And I have to interview someone and I was wondering do we conveniently have like a sommelier? Because I thought that was a very interesting job, like a wine and spirits. So then when I heard that my mom knew a person, then I was very interested and yeah, it's wonderful to be able to talk with you.
Excellent. And tell me about this culinary tech class. Where are you taking that at?
We're taking it at FHS currently. I'm in grade 12. Focusing primarily on baking. There's two separate classes, one for cooking and one for baking. I'm in the baking portion.
Okay, excellent.
So I just thought I could possibly start you off due to like a journalistic reasons. I have to make it clear that I'm able to I have to get it across that whatever essentially is said inside the interview can be used for like my if they can be used for my project. Are you comfortable with that?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Do you have any questions? Anything you want to know before we start?
No, I'm ready.
All right, let's start with the easy questions. What's your name and your current position?
So my name is Charlotte Burho, and I am a wine professional.
Wine professional.
Yes.
Can you provide a brief description of your role and what it entails?
Yes. So as a wine professional, I can give folks recommendations and describe to them wines. It can be a little bit more involved than just that. That's kind of more like the basic, simplistic
Mhm.
explanation for it.
All right. Uh, what has inspired you to pursue the role of sommelier?
That what I thought was a really interesting question, actually. Um, I don't know if I was inspired originally to be a sommelier, but I fell into it. And from that, I recognized that more education was needed and it excited me. And so then I pursued that path. And it was very much um, kind of like when you get on the internet and you go down that internet wormhole, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what happened. And when you find out that there's so much more that you can know about something and you're really passionate about it, that I think is what inspires you. And to be able to then break it down and articulate it in such a manner to someone else who might not necessarily be interested or passionate about it,
Yeah.
but make it intriguing for them.
Okay. That's a very interesting way to describe it. Um, have you shifted career paths in your life? Did you grow up wanting to be a sommelier, or how did you get into the business? Is what I'm asking.
I feel like it's a really complicated question, but at the same time, it's a really easy one to answer. And yes, my career path has shifted. I actually studied in the science field and pursued research scientifically for over a decade. And then I went into sales, and then it was an opportunity that just presented itself. And I was like, that right there is what I want to do now.
Alrighty. What difficulties did you face as you were pursuing this career?
Mm. So there were some barriers for sure. One was financial. As with any furthering education, there's always a cost associated with it. And also, some of the difficulties are the accessibility of those classes. And they're not, although we live in New Brunswick and
Mhm.
currently I live in Fredericton, which is the capital, it's not necessarily a large city. And so some of those opportunities that would be presented in more urban centers like Montreal or Halifax or Toronto or Vancouver. They're not quite here. And so not just the accessibility of being able to access an online class, but then being able to have the ability and the affordability to travel on top of your enrollment fees to then write the exams, which are in person.
All right, in-person exams. What are the in-person exams like?
Well, that's interesting. They do range. Some are kind of combinations of like multiple choice, short answer, and then essay questions. And then there's usually a tasting component afterwards as well.
Tasting afterwards. What are some things that you enjoy about the career?
The learning aspect, I think I would have always referred to myself as a perpetual learner, and I want to know about everything. I'm very curious by nature, and so I think with this is that the industry, even though it has been, winemaking has been around forever and sommeliers have existed for a really long time, the industry in itself is evolving and new things come out, which is really intriguing, and how that comes about because of either new technology or new ideas just presenting that self. And again, you might not realize it, but when you're studying about wine, you're also learning about the area and the geography of where that place is, which is really interesting as well.
What are some examples of how this career has evolved through the years?
Well, most recently, there's classifications of wine, and recently there's been new classifications coming out. And even if we look at BC wine, which is still, Canadian wines are a newer industry overall,
Mhm.
BC has geographic locations which are unique, and recently they got a new well, it's not a DOC, it's a area geographic location, and the Naramata Bench has now been identified as being a unique region to grow grapes and make wine in. And so you won't necessarily always see wines from BC saying from Okanagan now. They might be narrowed down to that more specific area within the Okanagan.
Mm. I've actually been learning about like the different certifications, and I was wondering if you could tell me your credentials if that's possible.
Sure, because there's so many different avenues, and I think that was like one of the curious things too when you're going into and like which path do you go. I chose WSET, which is the Wine Spirits and Education Trust.
Hmm.
And for me, having that science background, knowing
Hmm.
that WSET is a standardized, so it doesn't matter if I'm here in Canada or the US or in Europe, the testing and what you're being taught is all
Hmm.
standardized.
Hmm.
And so for me, that appealed to that aspect of my science geek brain. And so that's where I chose to go down. There's definitely other ones. So currently I hold a WSET level 3 certified with
Hmm.
merit.
With merit. Can you describe that some more? What does that involve?
So merit is, I was trying to think of how to explain that earlier. It's
Hmm.
like you get a pass, you can have merit or distinction.
Hmm.
So if you get, I think, 60 or 65%, I would have to double check on what the actual values are for WSET.
Hmm.
And you get a pass. If you get between that and something else, then it's merit. And if you are in the top, then it's with distinct.
I see. Uh, how has the recent pandemic impacted your job?
So that's been quite a pivot for
Hmm.
sure. Um, so previously, I owned a wine bar in downtown Fredericton,
Hmm.
and with choices made, I had closed my physical location and went to private events with the idea that it was for a definitive period of time.
Hmm.
COVID certainly has changed that.
Yeah.
And so I went from doing private parties and events to then figuring out what the next move was. And for me, that turned out to creating a YouTube channel and talking about wine, and to roping in one of my colleagues for doing like an online session where we just promoted it as an event, had people, we didn't ask for a registration fee to attend. And I kind of went to him and said, I think people want to know about wine. If they don't, it will be you and I talking about wine, and we'll have fun. And more people started tuning into it, and it ended up being a 10-week series that we did. And it was really fun. We ended up actually putting a tip jar, and it worked out really well because people were interested. They wanted to know what we thought about things. They liked how they could also chime in because we kind of made it as an open session. So it was unique. I think we were probably the first folks to do it. And then we evolved into summer where people were getting out more. So then it was almost like another pivot is facing itself. And now, of course, we're going into colder winter. We may revisit that model. But yeah, it's, I think COVID, although not a awesome thing to have happened, I think it allowed folks to express their creativity or to find more ingenious ways of doing something because they love to do it so much anyway.
Where do you see yourself in the next few years? Like, will you work towards your next certification, or are you comfortable with your current role?
I will definitely be working towards my next certification. I have been fortunate enough that I had registered, and they were able to, because of all this and the situation of not being able to travel. I mean, you can travel, but you need that 14-day of isolation. So to do that on both ends of an exam is basically a month out of commission, and it really isn't doable. So I was fortunate to have that put on hold, but I have been actually researching myself on other certifications within that umbrella that I can possibly take that have already moved to an online platform, if you will.
Are there any peculiarities of being a sommelier compared to other jobs involving wine and spirits?
It is really interesting. In terms of peculiarities, I would say that it could go either way. I have definitely found, and again, it could be because we're not necessarily in such an urban center. People don't necessarily take the qualification seriously and are like, oh, so you get to drink a lot and talk about wine, when that's not really what it's about. Sure, that's involved, but it's usually always on a social level or on an educational purpose. And sometimes I get a little fiery about it, and I'll like shoot back, and I'm like, yeah, okay, well, you judge some wines and see how your teeth feel after that. Because it's not always fun, but again, it's people's perceptions, and that's okay. And I think part of my job, and so hence that peculiarity, is to educate others what it actually is.
What is your favorite wine and food pairing?
Oh, well, I am a lover of Italian wines. I never keep that a secret. And that's probably because I spent time in Italy learning about cooking. So my favorite would probably be any pasta with like a tomato-based sauce paired with a Chianti, like a Sangiovese. I would say Sangiovese, that grape alone, I would try it in anything, at least once.
At least once, at least.
Now, you had mentioned that you're in baking.
I'm in baking, yes.
So if I was to look at it from that standpoint, and are you baking as in like pastries, like sweets, or more on like?
Primarily towards the sweet aspects, but we've been making a little bit of everything.
Okay. Well, for me, if I was going to be like a dessert person, I would probably take something like a creme brulee and pair it with a coton du de Leon, which is a Chenin Blanc based wine, but it's gone through noble rot, so it's botrycized and has a little bit. It has, I was going to say a little bit of sweetness to it, but it can be a lot sweet.
I see. That's very interesting. I'll take that into consideration. Uh, would you actually recommend this career path to people, or like why or why not?
I would. I think there's a lot of opportunities. Even now, like I'm definitely much older than yourself,
Mhm.
and this was never considered a profession when I was your age. And knowing what I know now, if I could go back and tell
Mhm.
myself that that would be an option, whether it would have been something viable at the time. But now there's so many different types of career paths that you can take with this knowledge. You can have your own wine bar. You could be the head sommelier at a top Michelin restaurant. You could have it and work at a liquor board to decide which wines are coming in to the board itself that's available in your province. You could then be a distributor. You could start your own importation company. There's so many opportunities. You could go into making wine. Like for me, knowing now, it's just being a sommelier or having that education. You're not defined by just one, or not limited by just one opportunity.
Mhm. Okay, I'm just gonna write that down. Not limited by one opportunity.
So
Well,
I
that's
think you could even teach.
yeah. You could probably. I could. I yeah. And I
Teach
think
people
anybody.
to learn.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. Like it would depend on what you want out of it and what
Mhm.
your aspirations are.
Mhm. Well, that is absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for like answering my questions. Is there any like fun facts or anything you want to end this off with? Is there anything like specifically like interesting that you would like to end this off with, or?
Well, I would say that it's an interesting industry, and that it is still primarily dominated by men.
Mhm.
And if you're looking at master sommeliers specifically, there aren't that many. It's in the hundreds. And of that, the number of women are even fewer.
Number of women are fewer. Okay, I will. Yeah, I got that down. Thank you
You
so
could Google
much.
that number.
Yeah, I think it's 300, correct?
Yes, I just
300.
didn't want to give it the exact. I think it's like 380 something.
380 something. All right. Yeah, that's okay. That's very interesting to know. Thank you very much for like giving me that one last little tidbit. And yeah, thank you so much for taking your time to like interview just this random high school kid that you barely even know.
I love it. Any opportunity that I can take to talk about wine, I'm just excited about it. So thank you for the opportunity.
You're very welcome. Your passion is absolutely lovely. I can feel it coming right through the computer. It's absolutely remarkable. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
It was a pleasure having you. I hope you have a good day.
You too. Cheers.